Hey, my name's Tom, and I hope you've got that F1 Fantasy Friday feeling. I know I do, or at least I did. I've just eaten a kebab for dinner, and now just like immediate regret, just like what? But anyway, I'm going to be talking about my F1 Fantasy team. It's on screen at the moment. Got the template up. That's what I used in Singapore. I'm going to keep this nice and brief because I think for me personally, the team selection for this Japanese Grand Prix is straightforward. I'm going to very quickly show you the team I'm going to pick, more or less. And then the main discussion, I guess, is going to be actually more centered around whether we put the Mega Driver on Max Verstappen this weekend. Because for me, there's only 5 races left, and the best opportunity for using the Mega Driver is to coincide it with a race streak or coincide it with a sprint. Ideally, with both of them, but that's not going to happen for the remainder of the season. So for me, it boils down to, do I use it right now in Japan, or do I wait for Brazil and the sprint race? So that's what I'm going to be discussing predominantly. But so first things first is let's get my actual team that I'm going to have on screen. So I'm going to sort of flip the template on its head, bring the Ferraris down as the constructor to enable me to upgrade, if you want to call it that, Leclerc into Verstappen. Now I would love to change Sainz into Verstappen instead of Leclerc into Verstappen, but my measly budget of 117.8 million doesn't let me do it unless I get rid of Alonso, and I don't want to get rid of Alonso because FP1 he was P1, even though I'm not going to read too much into that whatsoever. For those of you interested, if you haven't looked at the FP1 FP2 results, they're there. Pause the video now. But otherwise, not going to look at that because it poured of rain like the whole time. The track was wet. It's not going to be super representative. That said, maybe it is a little bit representative because we could be seeing a lot of rain on Sunday. But I'm going to be discussing the rain in a minute because this isn't just an F1 fantasy video. This is a weather forecast video. So yeah, we are going to finish the team off by dropping Stroll. Like I said, I don't want to get rid of Alonso. I do think he's a good option for this race. That leaves me personally with 7.1 million in the budget, and I'm going to go for probably either Magnussen or Guan Yu Zhou. Now Guan Yu Zhou looks kind of appealing because Alfa Romeo brought an upgrade. They've got a new front wing, which looks, Bottas has spoken positively about that. Even though they've used it, or he's used it in the rain, he's feeling pretty positive about it. Now, Guan Yu Zhou is also going to get that upgrade from FP3 onwards, I believe. So, Alfa Romeo's could be a bit of a better contender than we've seen in recent weeks. So I could see Guan Yu Zhou pop in there as my budget option. However, Bottas has got a good record around Japan. He won here a few years ago. So Guan Yu Zhou less likely to get the teammate points. And I think Magnussen is more likely to get the teammate points, particularly after Schumacher crashed out in FP1. Didn't have any running at all because of the crash in FP2. Magnussen did really well actually. If we throw it back very quickly, you can see Magnussen here in P5. The Haas does do well in the wet conditions. We've seen that a few times this season, and if it's going to be wet in the race, we could see Magnussen do pretty well. And if it's going to be dry in qualifying, Magnussen might not qualify very well, but that enables him to push forward and get those positions gained in a potentially wet race, and therefore get those points. So Magnussen's really tempting, and also if I go with a team like this, it will enable me to get ready for America by switching back to the template, by getting rid of Verstappen because he's off his streak by then, bring back Leclerc. And then I have one substitution left at that point to bring in Lando Norris. It looks like I've got an extra substitution, but it doesn't work out like that. It's just because it's based off the current team. So I would probably go with a team, maybe, spoiler alert for the next race, this is the sort of team I might be looking at. And if I went with anyone other than Magnussen, so if I went with Guan Yu Zhou, I wouldn't actually quite be able to afford this team. So having Magnussen is a little bit of a bonus going into the following race. But anyway, let's flip back to the team that I was thinking of. Max Verstappen comes in there, Stroll disappears. Straight off the back of his best performance all year, and you're off the team. So yeah, anyway, this is the probable team I'm going to go with. Ferrari are edging pretty close to an increase actually, so it might be worth me pulling the trigger on Ferrari, because Red Bull are quite far away from an increase at the moment, and Ferrari are very likely to increase before I wake up tomorrow morning. So if I'm set on doing that, I might as well just get that extra 0.1 in the bank. But I'm not going to do it right this second because let's concentrate on the big issue at hand is whether we Mega Drive Max Verstappen. So, do we Mega Drive Max Verstappen? What are the pros? What are the cons? For me personally, I'm leaning just ever so slightly, leaning ever so slightly towards using the Mega Driver as opposed to not using the Mega Driver and saving it for Brazil. And let me explain why. The main reason, actually, let me flip that entirely on its head. Let me explain why I wouldn't Mega Drive him. The main reason I wouldn't Mega Drive him is because of the rain. There is a couple of other reasons which I'm going to talk on quickly in just a second, but the rain is definitely an issue because you know what happens when it rains? It just the races turn into chaos. We saw what happened on a wet track around Singapore, even though it didn't actually rain during the race. The wet track just caused chaos. People were sliding off, people losing control. There's a lot higher risk. And if you're putting your Mega Driver chip on a driver when it's raining or potentially raining, or, going from a dry to a wet race where we could see safety cars completely mess up the order, we could see, there's high risk, I think, of putting the Mega Driver on Verstappen this current weekend. And that is a big negative for me. Going forward, we could see the other option for me would be Brazil for the sprint race, because, got an extra 15, 16 points for the sprint race. But who's to say it's not going to pour rain throughout Brazil? We've had rain kind of consistently throughout the 2022 season. And Brazil, it's in that tropical band south of the equator. There's a rainforest there for a reason, because it rains. So there is a definite concern from me about whether I want to save it for Brazil, because, I just might be in the same situation, and, I might as well just used it back in Japan when he was on a race streak. But anyway, there's a couple of other pros and cons. Another con for me is actually, the race streak is worth plus 10. The sprint race is worth plus 15, plus 16. I think the extra point comes from fastest lap or something like that. I think you get a point for that. Or is that plus 3 points? That's plus 3 points, isn't it? I can't remember what the extra point is for, but regardless, you can get an extra 5 or 6 points if you wait for the sprint. That's only if Verstappen was to maximise the sprint race, so like get pole and then win Brazil. Whereas hitting the 10 points for the race streak, although it's not quite the high ceiling of the 15, 16 points, so when you triple that, you're missing out on roughly 40. Oh no, it's only an extra 5 points. Roughly 15 points, 15 to 18 points extra. But I think hitting the race streak is probably more likely, because you only have to finish in the top 10, which is a lot easier than actually winning the race. So if you wait for Brazil, you have to expect Verstappen to actually win the race, and obviously you want him to win the race regardless if you're Mega Driving him in Japan or not. But the race streak is just a little bit easier in my mind to actually achieve. So that leans me more again to putting the Mega Driver on Verstappen this weekend. Then another con. I keep referring back to the cons. I know I've got the cons in my head, but another con of putting the Mega Driver on. I will get to the positives in a minute. I mean, there is. I've already said I'm leaning towards it. I'll get there. I'm waffling. I know I do it, but bear with me. So another con is the lack of info. There's been FP1, FP2, and I've referred back to the spreadsheet again. Look at the laps completed. FP1, both Red Bulls, only 4 laps completed. A little bit better in FP2, but again, the track was wet, so it's kind of hard to get a good reading on. We don't know exactly, what the quality pace is until FP3, so it's important to pay close attention to FP3. This could be the most important FP3 of the season. It could be, it could be. So pay attention. Wake up early. Don't miss a deadline. For me, it's a 7 a.m. deadline, so I'm going to be up nice and early. Not early enough to watch the actual FP3. I'll probably wake up at like 6 a.m. just so I can get my team in order. Not that I'm like some sad geek or anything, but I am actually talking about this on the internet to you guys, so maybe I am. But anyway, I digress. Yet again, lack of info. FP1, FP2. We don't know for sure whether Verstappen and Red Bull are going to be the best car. However, I do think that the form going into this, the consistency that Red Bull have shown across a wide variety of circuits in different conditions as well, the Red Bull just looks strong wherever you put it, and therefore I actually have faith despite the lack of information. We should get some decent information from FP3, so I think you could look at that as a pro or a con really, but my main bit of advice would be pay close attention to FP3, even if you're not awake for it. When you wake up, hopefully before a deadline, think about FP3, because it's going to be quite good indicators. Look at the if you can get the information on what happened on the high fuel runs and the qualifying runs and try and differentiate the two, then we can try and get an idea of what the race pace is, hopefully, and also the qualifying pace. And if Verstappen's looking at the top of the leaderboard for that, then let's go for it. Let's Mega Drive it. Let's Mega Drive it as a team. We are as one. We will Mega Drive. But anyway, some of the pros now for why to Mega Drive. I've already touched on this actually with the race streak is more likely than sprint points. Verstappen could actually win the world championship this weekend, and I think that's quite a lot of motivation for him to do the best he can. Whereas if he's likely got the championship tied up, barring some crazy disaster, by the time Brazil comes around. So maybe he won't be quite so. This is Max Verstappen. He's probably going to be racing hard regardless if he's got the championship or not. But there's got to be that slight edge which has been sort of cut off from his motivation if he's already got the championship tied up. So yeah, but at the same time, you can look at it in a different light and say, you know, he still hasn't tied up the championship, and there's that added pressure. Maybe he tries to take a little bit too much of a risk in Japan. You know, he wants to finish it now. You know, the big hoo-ha about Honda's home race, and you know, does he feel slightly under pressure? Possibly to you know, try take that extra little risk that doesn't need to be taken, and we could end up seeing Verstappen in the gravel. That would be horrendous if you put the Mega Drive on him. So, you know, the Suzuka itself, I keep going back to the comp. Suzuka itself is not the easiest of tracks. It is a technically challenging track that is going to test these drivers, and obviously Verstappen's up to the test. But you know, it's not like an easy track like Monza. You know, there's no such thing as an easy track really, but you know, Monza kind of sticks out because it's just kind of straight chicane. But anyway, yeah, Suzuka's pretty tough. But yeah, also going forward, another kind of pro. Let's get back to the pros of Mega Drive and Max Verstappen. At the moment, it kind of fits what I want to do at the moment, because you know, I think the template is strong for a reason, having Red Bull as a constructor, bringing Leclerc back in as a driver, and sort of sitting on that, tweaking just tiny bits here or there throughout the rest of the season. You know, the final 4 races after the Japan Grand Prix, I think sitting on the template is quite nice. And if you wait to use the Mega Driver in Brazil, that means you have to be prepared to warp your team to get Verstappen into your team for Brazil. If you use it right now in Japan, when you know the streaks are lined up nicely for this to just work this way, you know, Ferrari on that double streak, so you know, I could see myself quite happily sitting on Red Bull for the rest of the season after Japan, but I definitely want Ferrari for Japan, and therefore it enables me to get Verstappen in without compromising the rest of my team. If we're going to wait on the Mega Driver, it will compromise our teams when we eventually want a Mega Drive in Brazil. I mean, there are other options. It's not just Japan and Brazil. You can do whatever you want, but these are, my opinion, the best 2 races to do it. So, you know, for team structure and forward planning, I think using the Mega Driver now in Japan is a nice way to get out of the way. Don't overthink it too much. Don't get too bogged down and worried about the rain. It's just a little bit of rain, never hurt anyone. And that's not true, but yeah, so you know, just kind of use Verstappen whilst he's on the streak, use Ferrari whilst on the double streak, get the Mega Driver chip out the way, out your hair, so you don't have to worry about it. Back to the template, tweak it here or there, a little bit here and there, according to, you know, practice results, and then finish the season off without too much stress. Where you know, you leave it for Brazil, which is the penultimate race of the season. And we could be stressing to warp our teams in the previous race to, you know, oh, I need to get Verstappen in my team for Brazil. I need to change this and change that, and I can't get the optimal team this week, so I need Verstappen next week. And I just don't want that. I just don't want that headache, to be honest. So that kind of sums up my thinking for whether to Mega Drive or not. And like I say already at the beginning of this video, which feels like about 30 minutes ago of me talking, I am currently leaning more towards using the Mega Driver. Get out of the way. Red Bull should be strong. Don't get too caught up in the rain. That's kind of what I'm leaning towards at the moment. You know, you got a nice easy turbo driver option on Perez as well. By the way, Perez is very much on the verge of hitting 20 million. So if you haven't already put the turbo driver on him, do it now. Right this second, do it now, because if he hits 20 million, you can't do it, and then you're going to be stuck with Carlos Sainz most likely, which might also be fine. But you know, Perez, he's on that quali streak. It looks like a nice easy turbo driver. So anyway, that's my thinking at the moment. There's lots to consider. Not so much on the team selection this week. It almost picks itself in my mind. It's more just this Mega Driver. Do we take the gamble in the rain? And I'm currently leaning more towards yes. I'll be very interested to know what you are thinking. And have I missed anything? Have I missed any of the pros or cons? Can you think of any other reasons why it might be a good or bad reason to Mega Drive Verstappen right now, or wait? Please put them in the comments, because you know, I've been scratching my head in the short period of time I've had at work today to think about this. I'm just been like weighing everything up in my mind, and I may well have missed some, you know, some important information somewhere. So if you guys know, then let me know, please. So yeah, that's it for me. I'll be back. I think there's a couple of weeks to the next race, so yeah, I'll be back for that. I hope you all do well. If we're going to go for the Mega Driver, cross your fingers, and I wish you all best of luck. And yeah, I'll catch you in a couple of weeks. So thanks for watching. Give the video a like if it's helped you. Thanks, and bye.